Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack, and today we brought on a fabulous guest, Jay Connor, all the way from Carolinas. So he has a lovely view out there by the beach, and so I'm definitely envious of that lovely view that he has over there. And he is a proven real estate investment leader and is known as the private money authority. And without using his own money or credit, he maximizes private money to buy and sell properties with profits averaging about $71,000 per deal. And he's coached over 2,000 real estate investors since 2011, teaching them how to raise private money. And he's also just finished writing his private money guide as well that he has so graciously offered to share with our listeners at the end of the podcast episode as well. But Jay, thank you so much for being on here on today's podcast episode. Welcome to the show.
Eileen, thank you so much for inviting me to come along. I'm excited to be here with you. And I'm most excited about talking about my favorite subject, and that's private money for real estate deals.
Absolutely. It's all about money. Where do we get it?
Absolutely. You know, that's the two biggest questions. Where do I get the money and how do I find the deals?
Yep. So Jay, let's start off by sharing a little bit, if you can, about your background and how you got started with real estate.
Sure. So I was actually raised in the mobile home business, manufactured homes. My father had that business and I was in the manufacturer. So that's affordable housing, if you will. So I was in that industry until 2003. And the financing for those products sort of much went away for the most part. You don't see many mobile homes or manufactured homes being delivered these days like you did back then. So I knew if I ever got out of mobile homes, I wanted to get into single family houses. So from 2000, so I went full time. My wife and I, Carol Joy, and I went full time investing in single family houses in 2003. Well, from 2003 until 2009, January 2009, the first 6 years we were in the business, I used local banks, traditional money, mortgage companies, et cetera, to fund our real estate deals the first 6 years. But then in January of 2009, I remember it just like it was yesterday, I picked up this telephone. In fact, here in North Carolina, we still have landlines. It's an amazing thing. Actually, receivers that have
with the cord and everything.
Yeah, what's a cord? You know, landline. So I picked up my telephone and I called my banker. And I had this conversation with him many times for 6 years, had a great relationship with him. I called him up and I said, hey, I've got 2 houses under contract. They represented over $100,000 in profit. And I told him where they were located, the after repaired value, funding that was required for each of those deals, and my closing date. Well, I learned, Eileen, right there on that conversation, very, very quickly, that my line of credit had been closed with no notice at all to me. And my first thought was, I wish I'd known that before I put down earnest money. Back then in 2009 in North Carolina, when you put earnest money down, you could not get it back. So anyway, I said, why have you closed my line of credit? Well, it wasn't because of my credit score. I had an 800 credit score. I had a great track record in paying the bank. But I learned that not only myself, but pretty much every other real estate investor in the nation had lost their lines of credit because of the global financial crisis that we were going through. So I hung up the phone, and Eileen, one of my very first mantras that day came to my mind, which is it's impossible to fail unless you choose to quit. And quitting was not an option for me because I'm getting ready to lose $100,000 in profit on these 2 houses. So I sat here at my desk for a moment and I picked up the phone and I called my friend Jeff, who lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. He was a real estate investor. I told him what had just happened. He said, welcome to the club, Jay. I said, what club, Jeff? He said, the club of losing your line of credit at the bank. I lost my line of credit last week. I said, well, how are you funding your deals now? He said, private money. I said, what's private money? I'd never heard of private money. I never heard of private lending. And I tell you, Eileen, this chapter in my life and in my business career is the perfect example of a blessing in disguise. So, growth takes place in the valleys and not on top of the mountain, right? And growth takes place when there's difficulty and challenges, and you're able to push through. So I knew I had to find a new and a better and a quicker way to fund my deals. So Jeff says private money. So I learned all about private money just as quickly as I could. And I put my private money program together. So here's the deal. Private money is not about going and asking for money. In fact, Eileen, I've never asked anybody for money. I've never asked any of my private lenders for money. I got 44 of them and $8.5 million. And people ask me all the time, they say, Jay, how do you have all that private money for your deals and you never asked anybody for money? I said, it's real simple. You put on your teacher hat. And so that's what I did. I put my program together. It's completely opposite from borrowing money from the banks. When you borrow money from the banks, who makes the rules? They make the rules. But in this world, we make the rules, and we teach and offer a private lending program. And I teach other real estate investors how to do exactly the same thing that I do and have done. And so now I teach people. That's how I raised over $2 million in less than 90 days after being cut off. I went to my warm market, people I have an association with, my church friends, the Rotary Club friends, people in my cell phone. And I taught them what private money is. And I taught them about self-directed IRAs, which is another huge topic that lends itself to being successful in private money. So I taught them my program. It takes about 20 minutes to teach the program. And then when I get to the end, I shut up. I don't ask them for money. Now they're chasing me because we don't beg, we don't sell, we don't chase. We teach what private money is all about, and now the money is chasing us. And I'll tell you what, Eileen, since January 2009, I have never missed out on a deal for not having the money.
When you had talked to your friend and he brought up the topic of private money, how was it explained to you that made sense and just clicked?
Well, what clicked about it is that we get to make the rules. And we're not having to show our tax returns. We're not having to show credit reports. Our credit scores got nothing to do with how much private money you can get because the private lenders don't ask for it. We're doing business with individuals, not institutions. And I'm not talking hard money either. We're not, private money is not hard money. Hard money is like a broker that goes out and raises private money from individuals. So a private lender is an individual, a human being, just like you, me, you that's listening to the podcast, that loans money from their investment capital and or their retirement accounts to real estate investors. And so it just really, it was like a big light bulb. I'm going, oh my lands. There's no limit to the number of private lenders I could have. I had a limit to the amount of line of credit at the bank. So in less than 90 days, because of this difficulty, I had more money at my disposal to use for deals than I'd ever had before. And so, back then you had the foreclosure crisis going on, all those foreclosures coming on, you had to have the cash. Well, because of this difficulty and then finding an answer and a solution, our business actually tripled the first 12 months of me being cut off from the bank because I had all this private money I could use. You had to have the cash for the foreclosures. Well, the banks weren't lending money, but when you had the private money and you got the cash ready to go, you could pick and choose the deals that you wanted to do. So in answer to your question, how did it make sense to me? Wow, what a long list. I don't have to take any of my own money to the closing table. Zero. In fact, one of my favorite reasons that I love private money is we always pick up and get a big check when we buy a property because we're borrowing more than we need to purchase the property. If it needs rehab, we're getting all that money up front. I'm not borrowing unsecured funds. We're securing the note by the real estate that we're buying. But how did it make sense to me? The bottom line is it put me in control of my business and immediately fixed any and all cash flow problems that I may have had.
So after you figured out how private money works, you put together your program. And so walk us through, we probably don't have the full time to go into all the details of how you do it, but maybe at a top level, can you walk us through a sample? Like, for example, you talk about getting $71,000 of profit per deal. So let's say we find your property, and walk us through kind of the process that you typically have in order to educate people on private money, and then from closing and then getting that 71,000 profits on average per deal.
Sure. So first things first, as a real estate investor, we want to own the real estate that exists between our ears before we try to own this real estate out here. And what do I mean by that? So first of all is having the right frame of mind, the right mindset. And what do I mean by that? We're not chasing, we're not selling, we're not begging, we're teaching, right? And sometimes new real estate investors have a fear of rejection. There's no rejection. How can you be rejected by a private lender or someone to invest or loan money on your deals if you didn't ask them for any money? There's nothing to reject. You're teaching them what this is all about. And now if they, I promise you, if they have investment capital and or retirement funds, then they want to get involved, because where else can you get these kinds of high rates of return safely and securely? I mean, as of last week, the national average certificate of deposit, 12-month certificate of deposit in the local bank is paying a whopping 0.33%. 2 months ago, it was 0.17%. So when you come along and you pay 8%, like I do, I pay 8%, then that's 24 times more money than they can get in the local bank. And it's our job to get the word out and relieve them of that problem. I mean, in the current administration, regardless of what your political affiliation is, facts are facts. There's been more money printed in the basement of the White House since the current administration took control. So what does that mean? There's so much money out there in the market, and people don't know what to do with it. So it's our, responsibility to educate them. So let me answer your question. Your question is, walk us through a deal as to how that works on using private money and ending up with a $71,000 average. Well, step number one is you got to have the money lined up first. That's step number one. Have private money from your private lenders pledged. They haven't given you the money because we're not going to use the money until we have a deal, right? So we got the money lined up and pledged. They're on board. They understand the program. So I say money sitting on the shelf that's waiting to be deployed. So you got your money. It's very easy to get $500,000, $1 million ready to go in less than 30 days when you do the business like I do. So you got your money lined up. Now it's time to find a deal. Well, I tell my students all the time, unless you have consistent leads coming in every day, you have a hobby. You do not have a business. So we need consistent seller leads coming in our marketing funnel or from our marketing funnels all the time. So I use 3 different Google ad vendors to get me leads. And of course, we're not buying anything in the multiple listing service. There's nothing in the multiple listing service. There's no inventory. So all the houses that we're buying are directly from owners of houses that either they are personally distressed with personal problems or the property is distressed or both. So we use Google ads, we use Facebook ads. I have a direct mail campaign to people that are in foreclosure that we mail to offer assistance. By the way, there's another part of the frame mindset is having a servant's heart. I'm out here to serve. When people respond to our foreclosure letters, one of the first questions we ask them is, do you want to keep your house? If the answer is yes, we ask them, have you talked to your lender about a loan modification or a payment deferment program, et cetera? And if they're able to keep their house and we make nothing off of that, that's great, because everything goes around because of the law of reciprocity. So we have consistent leads coming in. So let's recap. You got your mindset right. Number 2, you got your money lined up. Number 3, you've got consistent leads coming in every day. What happens next? Well, as those leads are coming in, we want to talk to those potential sellers ASAP. So I have a full-time acquisitionist that's been with us for about 15 years now that does all the negotiating. So they get the information, all right, from the seller. We check out the comps, the sold comps. What's the really good after repaired value? If the math looks like it's going to make sense to do the deal, the next step is my realtor, that's also been my main realtor since 2004, my realtor, one of my general contractors, and my acquisitionist goes and looks at the property and estimates repairs if there are any repairs. So we look at the property, estimate repairs, and then within 24 hours, we look at the math and we make our offer on the house. We may buy it on terms, subject to the existing note. We may buy it with seller financing, but in most cases, we're paying all cash with private money because that's what most sellers require, is all the cash. So we negotiate the deal. They accept the offer. We go under contract. And now here is a perfect example of mindset. I've got the property under contract to buy. What happens next? Now it's time for me to call up my private lender that's in the top of the queue that's waiting for their money to be used. This is so important, Eileen. Call up the private lender. I don't ask the private lender if they want to fund this deal. That's the most stupid question I could ask. Of course they want to fund the deal. They've been waiting for the phone call because here's the magic. We never teach the private lending program to a new potential private lender and tell them about a deal that we need funded. If I do, I already sound like I'm desperate. It's like I'm saying, oh, I need you to fund this deal. No. We teach the program. They pledge the amount of money they got. Is it investment capital? Is it retirement funds? Do we need to introduce them to the self-directed IRA company for them to move their funds over so they can loan money to us, whatever? So I call them up. We got the deal. And here's my exact script that I say to them. Call them up, have a little chit chat. And then here's exactly what we say to the private lender. I've got great news. Say, Eileen, let's say you're one of my private lenders. So I call you up. We have a little chit chat. You tell me how the weather is there in Orange County in California. We have a little chit chat. And I say, Eileen, I have got fantastic news for you. I can now put your money to work. Now let's stop right there. You see, I know how much money you got because you told me and you're waiting for me to put your money to work, right? So Eileen, I got fantastic news for you. I can now put your money to work. And then I tell you, Eileen, 4 things. I tell you where the property is located, the after repaired value, the funding required, and the closing date. So here's the conversation. Eileen, I now have a house over here in Newport next to Morehead City. The after repaired value is $200,000. The funding required is $150,000. You see, I know you've got $150,000 because you already told me, and I got my notes in the file. So the house is in Newport. After repaired value is $200,000. By the way, Eileen, I know you can't even get an outhouse in California for $200,000.
No, you cannot.
Be that as it may, Eileen, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I got a house in Newport under contract. After repaired value is $200,000. The funding required for the deal is $150,000, and you'll need to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney. Of course, in California, that would be your escrow or title company. Need you to wire your funds for closing by next Thursday because that's when closing is. End of conversation. And you're going to say, okay, because you've been waiting for the phone call. So we fund the deal. The funds are wired either from your checking account or from your self-directed IRA account. The deal is funded. Now we close. I always borrow more than I need to buy the house. So I bring home a big check, particularly if there's going to be a major rehab involved. And of course, the only way this is going to work is if I can buy that house at a discount, at a substantial discount, right? So we close on the deal. And then if rehab's involved, we rehab it. When I buy with cash, I put it in the multiple listing service and I sell it and cash it out with cash, right? If I bought it on terms, such as subject to the existing note or seller financing, then I'll typically sell it on terms. But back to private money. So we rehab it, we put it in the multiple listing service, we cash out, and the private lender is paid off. So how's that $71,000 work? Well, for example, if I've got an after repaired value of $200,000, it's very common for me to buy that house for $100,000. Okay, 50% of the after repaired value. Let's say it's got a rehab of $30,000. Well, I can borrow $150,000 because I borrow up to 75% of the after repaired value. So in that case, it was $150,000 that I borrowed. If I bought it for $100 and you wired $150,000 at closing when I bought it, I'm bringing home a $50,000 check, less closing costs. So I may use $30,000 of that for the rehab, and the other I can use in my business any way that I want to. Then we go to cash out. I sell for $200. I bought it for $100. I had $30,000 in rehab. Right there's an example of how you make $70,000, less closing costs, less carrying costs on a $200,000 after repaired value house. So that's the fast 30,000 foot view from start to finish.
How does a private money lender get paid? And then how do you negotiate like the terms that makes it favorable for both sides?
Yeah. So the private lender gets paid. First of all, everything we do is either interest only payments or interest accrued. I leave it up to the private lender as to how often they want to get paid, because different private lenders have different objectives. We have some senior private lenders that need the monthly income to live off of because they don't want to touch their principal. Well, if you're borrowing more than you need to buy the house and you're making monthly payments, whose money are you using in the initial payments? You're using the private lender's money in the initial payments to make their payments. But they're always interest only. And here's why. Interest only payments is a win for the private lender, and interest only payments is a win for us as the borrower, the real estate investor. It's a win for the private lender because if you're making principal and interest payments, you're paying their principal down every month. As a result, they don't have all their money invested in that deal, so they're making less money. So interest only is going to make them earn more money. Interest only payments is a win for us as the borrower because interest only payments helps cash flow. Interest only payments are smaller than principal and interest. As far as the length of the note, typically I make the note 2 years if the private lender is loaning investment capital. And then if they're loaning it from their self-directed IRA, I'll set that up for 5 years, although in most cases, we're not going to be using the money for that long. Now, in the promissory note, we give our private lenders what's called a 90-day call option, which means if they have some type of emergency come up and they need their money back early, then all they got to do is give us a 90-day notice. And in that case, that gives us plenty of time to replace their money with a different private lender's money. But since 2009, I've only had 2 notes called due early, and both of those were medical emergencies. So the terms that are favorable for both sides, that's the length of the note. Again, it's conservative. I typically don't borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value, which is going to give a nice 25%, equity cushion for the private lender. Again, I'm not borrowing unsecured funds. It's always secured and backed by a mortgage or deed of trust, depending on the state that you're in. And so it's so much more safe and secure than, say, the stock market. That's one big reason our private lenders love our private lending program, is because their investment or their principal amount is not volatile. The value of it is not volatile like the stock market. And it's being backed by real estate, right? So, you invest in a stock or mutual fund, the value of that can be less tomorrow than it is today. But we tell our private lenders all the time, your principal loan amount remains the same until we sell the property. You know exactly what your return is going to be.
So I have 2 questions, related questions. What is the biggest mistake that you've seen when people are using private lending money? And then what is the biggest mistake that you've seen private lending do as they're lending the money?
So the biggest mistake from the borrower side?
Yes.
And the biggest mistake from the private lender side?
Yes.
All right. So the biggest mistake from the borrower side is, first of all, not knowing your numbers. You got to be good and confident that if a rehab is involved, that really what are those repairs going to be? And of course, it always costs more than you think it is, because Murphy lives in every house. And we know who Murphy is, right? Even sometimes Murphy's cousins and grandchildren show up on the unexpected, right? So, but know your numbers, know your math, and stick to the math. The math makes the decision on your maximum offer, right? So don't become emotionally involved and do a deal and be borrowing money from a private lender that you should not be borrowing on, right? You got to really know what the value of that house is. If you're rehabbing it, really what is a true conservative after repair value. So know the numbers. That's the biggest mistake, is not knowing your numbers as the real estate investor. From the private lender side, the biggest mistake I've seen private lenders make is loaning money out unsecured. I mean, you can legally. I mean, you can loan money just on a promissory note. You can loan money out of your self-directed IRA account unsecured. But why in the world would you? I mean, one of my private lenders is my own mother. My mother, 87 years old, just got a brand new Corvette. She is hot to trot. So I give my mother, as one of my private lenders, the same security that I give every other private lender. So how are they secure? First of all, they've got the deed of trust or mortgage that allows them to foreclose on me if I don't pay. In other words, if I don't pay, the property does, and they get the property. And in that case, they would actually make more money than the interest that I pay them. So I'm going to secure it. How else are they secure? On the insurance policy, I'm going to name the private lender as the mortgagee, just like a bank would. You know, banks are named as the mortgagee on the insurance policy. And guess what? Mortgagees get paid before anybody else does, or at least the mortgagee, the private lender's name is on the check if there's an insurance claim. How else are they secure? On the title policy, always buy a property with a title policy, we name the private lender as an additional insured in case there's any title issues down the road. So biggest mistake a private lender makes, letting money out of your checking account without security.
Fantastic, Jay. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, Eileen, you're the perfect interviewer because you just let me ramble on until I'm done. And then you've got the next question. So thank you for letting me share so much information in such a short period of time.
I know. Well, it's a lot of golden nuggets that you're dropping here. So I'm very grateful for you to be on here and sharing all of your information with us. So really appreciate all that.
Thank you.
So Jay, what is next for you?
What is next for me? So I'm continuing to grow my coaching. I'm so passionate. Of course, I enjoy the real estate business, but after you've rehabbed over 450 houses, a house is pretty much as a house, right? And I have such an amazing team that the business is an automatic. I mean, I actually work in the real estate investing business 5 to 10 hours a week. And we're blessed for all these years to earn, over 7 figures. So it's running an automatic. So my passion is in coaching and teaching. So in 2011, I started coaching and teaching other real estate investors how to get funding for their deals from private lenders like me. So what's next for me? I tell you what's next for me, because it's going on right now. I have just finished writing my brand new private money guide that I am now just starting to share with other real estate investors for free, and I'm giving it away. The name of it is 7 Reasons Why Private Money Will Skyrocket Your Real Estate Business and Help You Build Incredible Wealth. It is jam-packed full of the exact steps you need as a real estate investor to get a lot of private money very, very quickly. Remember I said, get the money lined up first. And so whether you're brand new or you're a wholesaler and you want to stay in some deals and you need the funding, or maybe you're a seasoned real estate investor and you just want more private money that's cheap and where to get it fast, and you get to make the rules. You can download this money guide at www.jayconner.com/money guide. And again, I'm an ER, not an OR. So that's Jay Conner. Most people think I'm an OR, but I'm an ER. So it's Jay Conner, JayConner.com Money Guide. Go right there right now after the show, download it, and that will get you on the fast track to never missing out on a deal because you didn't have the funding.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jay. And we'll also include that in the show notes so everybody can get a chance to pick up their free copy as well.
Awesome. That's great.
So, Jay, how has real estate investing impacted your life so far?
The biggest way real estate investing has impacted my life and my wife's life, because we're in this together, Carol, Joy, and myself, it has allowed us in so many ways to give back and to pay it forward. So we've reached a point in our life now to where we want to be able to make an impact. We want to serve. We want to serve the local community. We're very involved in our local church. And real estate investing has allowed us, the biggest impact has allowed us to move to what I call significance, living on purpose with a purpose by being able to serve others. And so when there's financial needs that are, that we hear of, we're able to become involved in those. And plus freedom. I mean, most of us get in real estate because we want freedom. And when you got freedom, when you can choose when you want to work, set your own schedule and run the show, what do we all want? We want to be happy. Well, I promise you, when you have freedom, you are happy.
And if there's one thing that you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started, what would that be?
Private money. I had no idea until the difficulty came along and I got cut off from the banks that this thing called private money even existed. But in addition to that, there's one other thing that I really wish I'd known, because I made a big mistake when I first started out back in 2003. And that is I bought a property with the intention of flipping it. But by the time I got the rehab finished, the market had started to turn down. And here's the big mistake I made. I did not calculate, I did not take into account what would be the most monthly rental income that I could bring in per month if I was stuck with that property and I couldn't flip it and sell it. And would that monthly rental amount cover the debt, the underlying debt on that property? And that mistake I made cost me thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because I ran that property in the red at a loss for some period of time until the market turned around. So the lesson that I wish I knew then that I do know now, and that is, even if my intended exit strategy is to flip a property, also calculate and take into account, if you can't sell it and you need to rent it out, can the rent cover the debt service?
No, thank you for that. It's always looking at the different risks out there and trying to mitigate them and trying to figure out all the different possibilities and how can we hedge against that. So that's just another factor to take a look at it. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
Absolutely.
And if there's one thing that sets the successful people apart in real estate investing, what would that be?
Resiliency. You never give up. You keep pushing forward. You push through your fears. Become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Growth always takes place in the uncomfortable arena. So one of the biggest is, resilient. Stay in there, keep pushing forward, and hang around other people that are like-minded, that are in the real estate investing business. My wife and I are in four mastermind groups of other real estate investors. And that doesn't include the mastermind group that I run of other real estate investors. So successful people hang around other very successful people. So be careful who you choose you're hanging around.
What do they say? Your net worth is, and the people that you surround yourself with are the 5 people that are closest to you who define who you are.
Yes, Jim Rohn said it, at least he's credited with it. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So pick your friends and your associates carefully.
Thank you so much, Jay. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing all these knowledge pieces and all your tips and how you've been able to build it, utilize private money, how it works. Definitely appreciate everything that you shared with us today.
Eileen, thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
And Jay, one last question for you. In addition to being able to download the resource guide that you've provided here today, are there any other places that our listeners can go and find out more about you, taking a look at what you're doing in this space? Where's the best place for them to go?
Sure. Just go to my main website, which is www.jayconner.com, JAYCONNER.com. And I've got all kinds of resources there as well for people to take advantage of.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Eileen.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.